Okay, and then I want to share my screen. Donna, can you see my screen?
I can.
Oh, good, excellent. Okay, so we are now on chapter 2, and I have called this responsibility. Some of our Hebraists over here might argue about my translation, but I think it's a good one. The Hebrew word is Zehirut, Zehirut. And in modern Hebrew, it means to be, Zahir means to be careful, right? To be, and the way it's translated over here has been to be watchful. But I really think when we read this chapter, what he's speaking about is taking responsibility for ourselves. And remember, we're on a progression over here of spiritual growth. This is what it means to become a mensch. And the first thing he says is Torah. You have to learn Torah, know what's what. And then he says, you got to work on yourself. And the first thing to work on yourself is Zehirut, becoming watchful, or what I prefer, responsible for oneself. And that is, you should take responsibility for your own deeds and matters. And that means that you have to take time to contemplate and watch over one's deeds and ways, whether they are good or bad, as opposed to leaving them what did he say? To habit like a blind person in the dark. So this is, right? This is a very fundamental part about being human, and that is that we have choice. We have free choice, and we make choices all the time. But unless we become alert to the fact that we can make a choice, or that we should be making choices, our choices happen automatically. There's a wonderful book. I don't know if you are familiar with it. It was written by Daniel Kahneman. He's a Nobel economics laureate. He won a Nobel Prize for decision-making theory, and he wrote a wonderful book. Actually, a lot of, I think, his theories in the book, called Thinking Fast and Slow. And he says, really, he took how people make decisions and what decisions they make and how they evaluate things. And he came to this huge realization that we have two systems. One system is he calls system 1, which is intuitive system. It's a system that works by itself. It's the natural system. Without thinking, it works. And then we have another system, which he calls system 2, which he says only works if you power it with thinking. You have to stop and think. And he's got all these, I don't know how many chapters there are, but they're fascinating, all these heuristics about how people evaluate things and what they base their decisions on. I just read the chapter I read recently is called Availability. So he says it's human nature that if information is readily available, if you've had an experience, if you would ask someone that's being towed into a garage in order to get a flat tire repaired, and say, how many people do you think, what percentage of people do you think get flat tires? They would way overestimate it, because it's called, he calls it the availability theory, availability, I'm not sure what he calls it, but he says, because it's happened to you, you imagine it's happening to everyone else. So it's not that, it sounds funny, but without stopping and thinking about how we are living and what we are doing and our actions, it's not that we'll stop. We'll go on but we're going to go on with the way of what he calls hergel. Hergel is habit, but really it's system one. System one will operate. We'll be driven by what we're driven by. We'll estimate and make decisions by what we think, not what really we think, but what comes naturally. And there are a lot of mistakes that come from that. So the first point over here is, in order to get on this path of spiritual elevation, one has to become responsible for oneself. And that means taking the time to contemplate and watch over our deeds and ways. Okay. I found this. I don't know who Gerald Way is, but it's very nicely done. One day your life will flash before your eyes. Make sure it's worth watching. Very profound, right?
Yes.
We all know that, right? We all know that there are people that spend really their whole life doing things, and then comes to the end and they're like, really? I did that? And I know that you're here with me learning Musar. We all feel that, right? We all feel that, which is good, because that means we are thinking, and it's a whole discussion about, so what do you do if you feel many years of your life have gone by without really thinking about, or you went down the wrong path or whatever? And that's really the subject of teshuvah, of repenting. It's also a terrible translation, but not for now. Keep that when we get near to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we'll deal about that. Okay. The Talmud often says this phrase, I love it, Ein hadavar talui ela bi. The matter depends only on me. And that's really, you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves, right? And I would imagine all of us any of us that have been involved with helping other people, if they don't want to help themselves, obviously the first thing we need to do is teach them this lesson and say, listen, I could help you, but at the end of the day, you need to take responsibility for yourself. And that's when everything starts. So it's a wonderful, simple point, extremely profound, that this is the beginning step. This is the beginning step in what I call the spiritual elevation. Yes.
Nitzan, there's the joke in my professional world, which is, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb?
Okay.
And it only takes one, but the light bulb has to want to change.
There you go. Okay. Fantastic. I like that. Thank you.
Rabbi,
Yes, no.
I have this on my refrigerator, and it says, remember the 3 R's: respect for yourself, respect for others, and be responsible for your own behavior.
Nice.
Is that what you're saying?
Excellent. Yes. That's what he's saying is the first step. Okay. Now, he says something which is, I think, also nice. One who walks along in this world without contemplating whether his ways are good or bad. Now, remember, this is a book of ethics, right? He's really talking about, are you a good person or a bad person? Are you doing good deeds? Are you doing bad deeds? It's similar to a blind man walking on the bank of a river. His danger is certainly very great, and his calamity is more likely than his escape. For negligence in taking responsibility for yourself from danger due to natural blindness, and negligence due to willful blindness is one and the same, right? So who said it? None are as blind
as those who cannot see.
Those who do not want to see, right? I'm not sure who said that, but what's also in this, what is also included in this few sentences, paragraph, is that the general tendency of people, of the world, is actually to pull us down ethically, not up, right? The danger is more certain than the escape. And look at our world. Look at our world today, right? It's difficult. It's difficult to go up. It's difficult to be elevated. It's difficult to do the right thing. So not paying attention to that and leaving oneself to system one, the natural tendency of people, of ourselves, it's going to be disastrous. We need to, we spoke about this, I think, in the first session. We need to, Audrey, I'm coming back to your question. Thank you for putting it there. We need to work, right? So, you know, if our little ant forgot to do the work, we know what's going to happen to his little dung ball or whatever that is. Yes, Audrey. You need to unmute.
Right. It just said that natural blindness, or what I would refer to as willful blindness, not
Yes.
seeing, taking actions, it's one and the same. Do you really believe it's one and the same? And I say that because I think that people who know better and don't do what is obviously the right thing are, I guess, at greater fault. And
Yes, I agree with you. I don't think he's talking about that aspect. I think he's just talking about the aspect of the
risk involved.
The risk involved, and what's going to happen. What's going to happen is you're going to land up in the same boat because you didn't look, and therefore it's going to happen to you. Yeah, of course. Whoever's, you know, is more knowledgeable and able is more responsible, right? Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know if this is 100% true, but it's definitely something worth considering, right? 70% of affluent families fail to extend their wealth beyond the second generation. Anecdotally, one of my biggest supporter, actually my biggest supporter by far, is a second generation, a person of second generation wealth. And they went on a seminar for philanthropists. And I said, tell me one thing that they told you. And they said, the third generation always messes up. And I said, so what are you going to do? She was like, I don't know, you know, but why? Because they didn't, right? It came to them easy. They don't have to think about it. It's there, right? They didn't learn the mistakes by doing it themselves. And honestly, they take it easy. They take it easy. They think third generation people, they think the money is there and it's just going to continue, but they don't realize it takes an incredible amount of work. So they leave it to system one, where really this is saying you have to evoke, you have to turn on system two. Okay. Actually looked up, see no evil, what? I don't know which one goes first. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. It's actually a Japanese proverb, and it's with the monkeys. They actually, it has a very different meaning to, I think, what most of us think it means. But to me, it's the image of naivety, right? I won't, you know, cutting. No, do not be naive to yourself. You need to take responsibility for yourself. It's not just going to happen. right? The Balei Musa, the great Musa thinkers used to say, Ein memela ba'avodat Hashem. Nothing comes by itself, right? You have to work. You have to put in the effort. The amazing thing is, if you do, it really can work. If you do, it really can work. But you can't leave it to happenstance. Okay. Now, one of the cunning strategies of the evil inclination, that's the inner system one, really, is to relentlessly burden people's hearts with his service so as to leave them no room to reflect and consider which road they are taking. That's right. So according to classical Jewish thought, and this is definitely within that, this system one, this natural way of living without thinking, is cunning, right? It busies, it's almost like a force within pulling you down. And part of taking responsibility is recognizing that and fighting against it and trying to elevate ourselves, pulling ourselves up. So there's a force. There's a force to make us busy, right? And we, living here now today, are most probably the busiest people that have ever lived, right? We are always busy. Who stops to contemplate? Isn't this right? I don't know if you agree with me, but I see this as one of the biggest challenges of our techno addicted generation, is that instead of stopping and thinking, we now have a go-to. It's called our phone, it's called our computer, it's called our laptop, right? Whereas people used to stop and, I try to find it actually, I couldn't find it. My brother sent me a beautiful meme, a wonderful meme. It was a picture of a lot of people at an art gallery, and most of the people are on their phones. And there are two people looking at the art. And one person, on his phone with his friend says, "Oh, look which idiots forgot their phones at home," right? That's where we are up to, right? So this is, to me, this is a very, I suffer from this. When instead of sitting and thinking about my life and something useful, I'll just again and again go and, you want to see what our college students are doing, right? So time spent on social media daily. Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So, right, less than an hour. It actually gets better. Look, by the time they're seniors, right, 18% are less than an hour. Look at this, 6 to 10 hours on social media. Now, I got to tell you, social media is not all bad. There's some good stuff out there. People learn a lot. They're able to see what's happening, get a real life impressions. But is it worth 6 to 10 hours a day? For freshmen, 38% of them are spending 6 to 8 hours a day, right? Somehow, I don't know how this works, but juniors are better than seniors, right? A quarter, right? And look at this, the other quarter is spending more than 10 hours a day. To me, that's ridiculous. That is, the amount of time. I saw, I don't know if I shared this with yesterday, but I want to share something. There's a word in Hebrew for time. What's the word in Hebrew for time? Zman, right? Shechion v'gimoni lazman hazeh, to this time. There's also another word. I don't know if you are familiar with it. At the beginning of the Birkat Hamazon, at the beginning of the benching of grace after meals, we do a zimun. There are three people that have eaten together. One invites the others to everyone else to do the blessing. It's called a zimun, and it means invitation. Zman, time. Our time is an invitation. It's an invitation to do something good. It's an opportunity. That's what time is. Every moment is an opportunity to do something good, worthwhile. To waste it, to throw away one's time is really a sin, right? It's a real sin. Now, I'm not saying that we don't need rest and recuperation, and we don't need to, sometimes watch something that's funny or entertaining. We need all of that, but we don't need ever to waste our time. And this is what it says in Pirkei Avot. Is actually by Hillel. The great Hillel said, "Im ein ani li, mi li." If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? What did he mean? He meant, who's going to take responsibility for you? And especially when it comes to one's ethical, moral life, who can get into you to make the decisions that you need to make? No one. It has to start with you. Okay, you could make Lori, you could make an argument for keeping ourselves busy. Use your time wisely and do something, not be lazy. Yes, Lori, of course, right? It's not that being busy is bad, but being busy to the degree that you never stop to contemplate is where the problem begins. That's what's the problem. Of course, after contemplation, one should be, in fact, very motivated. I find that in my life, that if I stop and I think and I come to something meaningful or profound in my own life, it becomes very motivating. I want to do something about it, and then I'll busy myself doing something about it. But it's that first step which we often miss out. Okay, Jill, I think I'm actually going further. Sorry, I know this is where you.
No, it's good. I'm fine.
Okay. Sorry, that was chapter 2. I want to do chapter 3 as well. So the way that he's going to do this is each midah, each character trait, he's going to, number one, firstly, describe what it is. And that's what we just did. And now then he'll talk about the components. Then he's going to speak about how do we go about acquiring it. And then he's going to speak about what we need to be cautious about, because what are the challenges in actually acquiring it? How are we doing for time? Okay. Let's spend 5 minutes doing this. Maybe we can always come back next week and review it as we go on to acquiring it. The Talmud says like this. It's a bit depressing, but we have to know what it means. I didn't translate that bit because it's the bit that's depressing. It was easier for a person not to be created than to be created. Once we created, life is a challenge. Life requires work. It's hard work. But now that he has been created, let him examine, pishpush, his deeds. Others say, let him mashmesh, his deeds, right? Some of you, we did this once before. We looked at this, right? Pishpush and mishmush. And what does that mean? That means one has to evaluate one's deeds. One has to think what's the right thing. And then one has to be aware, taking responsibility, taking time he says, during one's day, and then at the end of one's day, right? And those are the component parts to doing this, right? So so he says the pishpush are my deeds good or bad? And then he says the mishmush is even going into the detail of the good deeds and saying, how could they be better? And one can do that. One can get used to doing that, to thinking about their life, thinking about what they do. And then he draws an analogy. He says, listen, for things that people are naturally interested in, making money, business, etc., they do that a lot, right? How much energy, everyone is, everyone, all businesses that are successful are constantly evaluating how they're doing, right? Are these sales working? Are those sales working? Is this marketing strategy working, etc., etc.? So it's not a strange thing to do. It's actually a very logical thing to do. But often we, as he said before, right? We don't realize, we don't take the time to stop and think, well, this is a matter which really needs to be taken seriously, and we have to devote time to evaluating ourselves. Okay, now saying all of that, he says an interesting thing. He says, okay, we need to take responsibility for self. We need to do this. We need to start evaluating our actions. How do you evaluate? What should you do? So he says, it's based on also the Talmud. Therefore, the rulers say, let us enter into an accounting. This is a verse in the Torah. Therefore, the rulers over their evil inclinations said, come and consider the accounting of the world. What accounting should we do? How do we do this? How do you evaluate fairly your own actions, the loss incurred by doing a mitzvah against the gain earned through it, and the gain obtained through doing a sin against the loss incurred? So this is the basic, what's called cheshbon hanefesh, the accounting of oneself. Think about when you do something that you feel is wrong. Think about, what am I gaining, right? I blow up and I'm angry. What am I really gaining? Oh, that my will is done for the 1.5 seconds, that maybe someone is, scared of me and they'll do what I want. Against what I've lost. I lost my dignity. I've lost respect in other people's eyes, right? They might do, I might shout and scream today and get away with it, but I'm not going to do that tomorrow because they've lost respect for me. The gain obtained by doing a sin against the loss incurred, right? So, oh, hang on, that's the one I did. Let's do the loss incurred by doing a mitzvah against the gain earned through it, right? So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to think, wow, the people are, in Ukraine right now, they're our fellow Jews, they're hundreds of thousands, maybe. A lot of people that need help. What could I do? Maybe I could donate some money, but hang on a second, how much am I losing by giving my $50, $100, whatever it is? How much am I losing? Well, it's money and I need money. But what's the gain? What is the gain earned through doing that? That you never know. Maybe that would be of great help to someone right now in a way that they really need it, in a way that it's very meaningful. So that's the advice. That's the advice of how to evaluate your deeds, right? How to, during your day, to think about these things, and at the end of the day, to go over all your deeds from the day and say, okay, let's evaluate them in these terms. Included in here, okay, there you go, the cost-benefit analysis. Okay, so put all your costs on one, all right, what's it going to cost me? What am I going to benefit? And often the answer is very simple. Often the answer is wow, yes, it's quite simple. Cheshbon hanefesh, accounting of oneself. Okay, then he says like this: For one who is still held captive in the prison of his evil inclination, his eyes do not see the truth, and he is incapable of recognizing it. Therefore, this is the help that other people can give us, right? So once a person has taken responsibility for themselves and says, yes, I want to improve, I'd like to be a better person, you need help. And he says, this is the first bit of help that our rabbis are giving us, right? Make this accounting every day. And he says the reason why once you're prepared to work on yourself, you need help is because people don't see their own faults. We don't often see who we are. We all need some outside, more objective, we need some more objective thinking about ourselves than we can offer ourselves. Hence the coach, right? We all need a coach. That's what it says in the Talmud. Kol hanagoyim adam roeh chutz min nagoy atzmo. People can examine all blemishes except for their own. It's also halachically, and of course, I don't know if you ever saw this, but this is hilarious. Let's see for 2 seconds.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It's not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because
Okay. So, right, we're not all, and we do that sometimes, right? We all do that sometimes. Okay. How do I get to the next? Okay. And that's what it says in Pirkei Avot, in Ethics of the Fathers. Yeshua ben Prachya said, Aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a rabbi, and acquire for yourself a friend, and judge all people favorably. But really make for yourself a rabbi means, says the Rambam, even if he or she is not fit to be your rabbi, meaning you might be wiser, you might know more, still place him upon you as a rabbi so that you can give and take, discuss and argue with him. And as a result of the study of your wisdom will come to your hand. So, right, once you're prepared to work, take responsibility and do the work, you need someone else to help you. You need a coach. Just the last closing thought is that the word to pray in Hebrew, there are many words to pray actually, but the most common one is hitpalel. Hitpalel, tefillah, we are familiar with the word tefillah, really translates to judging oneself. I find this a lot myself, that sincere prayer is a very good way to, who's your Rav when you're praying? Who's the rabbi? God. You're praying to God and you're saying things to God, and then you stop and you think, well, okay, yes, I'm praying for peace, and there I am being the person that's not willing to make peace. God, I understand. Okay, I take what's called the musar, able to judge oneself. So, okay, that's where we're up to, and those are really the elements of the main character trait is taking responsibility for oneself. That's called Zehirut. And the elements are really making conscientious time to think about what you're doing, to evaluate what you're doing, and to use this already. We've got one very useful method to calculate, right? Cost benefit. Think about, what am I gaining and what am I losing when you're not sure about something? And then the last point is make yourself a rabbi. And it really could be anyone. As long as they are someone you can speak to honestly, and they will respond to you honestly and respectfully. Okay, folks, so any questions? Okay, then, so we'll see you next week.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, pleasure. Have a great week.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Rabbi.
Okay.
Shalom, everyone. Shavua tov.